gentlemen, and welcome to the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world show made for the fans by a fan. I am your host, as always, Richard Tiemann. This is the award-winning Fan Show. Thank you all for joining me. It is Tuesday, which means it is our recap day, the weekend or the week that was, since we got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I mean, it's almost a full week that you get between from Fan Show week to Fan Show week, right? So you go Thursday night, then you've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and then you come back Tuesday. And there's a lot that happens in that time. I'm still not ready to do all 5 days of the week because what I noticed, the reason, the story behind 3 nights a week. Let's go ahead. Let's take you back, all right? We'll do a throwback even though it's not Thursday. So when the show first started, it was called The Butt Fumble Show or The Butt Fumble Podcast. It was fun. Recorded it once a week. So I would sit in a room and record for 2 hours with a guest, usually, and discuss everything that had happened the week before and everything as far as a preview of what was to come. Would edit it for about 3 hours because I had to get it down to an hour. I didn't want to have a longer episode. I would do specials that were longer than an hour, like 2-hour specials. Yeah, but not all the time. I did because the rule with podcasts, the rule with any type of content is that you have to keep your listener or viewer engaged, and you have to, there's a limit on that. So most people will watch the first 30 seconds of a video to decide if they're going to invest in however long that video is. So if you see, you're scrolling through Facebook, right? And you see, hey, did you see Ryan Reynolds on The Tonight Show last night? Now you may actually click on the video and watch the first 30 seconds with the sound on, or all these videos have like the closed captioning now, the subtitles, and you can read that. And 30 seconds, you've got, I think, 30 seconds or less to see if the viewer or the person that stops just to look at it is going to give it the time of day. If it's a 5 to 10 minute clip, if they go beyond the 30, then a good chance that they're going to do it. With radio, though, you get a little bit more wiggle room because there's nothing visual going on, right? It's easy to listen while you multitask. It's easy to listen while you do chores, while you're in your car, while you're doing work. You can listen and have it be background noise, and things will catch your attention as they come along. So doing podcasts, doing a radio, we get a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to getting your attention. So we get, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I do know that I think you get like a minute of listening before a listener decides if they're going to fully invest in what you have to say, or they'll skim through to the different topics and the different, if there's a guest interview, if they want to listen to that specifically. So, never wanted to go over an hour, though, because over an hour, no matter what you've got, typically the listener will be tuned out. Like, that's their limit, is an hour. So I would edit for 3 hours to get it down to an hour because I wanted to have it right there. I didn't want to lose people. I didn't want people to think, oh, he just drones on and on for an hour. I can't do it. But there's a lot of stuff to cover from 1 week going into the next. If you're going to do a recap, a discussion, and then a preview, which is what most shows covering football are, if they're weekly, they will recap the week. Usually it's the big 5 headlines coming out of there, maybe just down to 3. They'll go into a big discussion about a trending topic from that week, officiating, for example. And then they'll do a preview of upcoming matchups with the big 3 games, couple 5 games, things to watch, this, that, and the other. So for me, 5 days a week is tough to do because I don't believe that there's really enough out there to talk for 45 minutes to an hour Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I mean, Monday you could do it. And again, we'll use the NFL as the example. Monday you could do it because you've got everything that happens Sunday. So you could get the most done on Monday. And if you do it before Monday Night Football, then you could spend Tuesday talking about whatever you didn't cover on Mondays. And then, of course, about the Monday night game. Wednesday, though, that would be the tough one. You could do fantasy, yeah, because now the waiver wires, well, you're supposed to submit them by Tuesday night so that they get accepted Wednesday, but now you're starting to set your lineup, start them, sit them. You could give some advice. Used to do that here on the show every Wednesday. Wednesday, you could also, I guess, preview the Thursday night game. Thursday, if it's before the Thursday night game, you could do more preview, and then you could talk about the weekend coming up. Friday, you've pretty much already talked about everything that you can talk about, unless you're going to go into even more. And yeah, there's headlines, there's breaking news probably every day, but not enough to really necessitate the need for a full-on episode. So for me, 3 was the magic number. Went live, tried 5 nights a week, couldn't do it. It was just too much. There was too much, we could talk about. So 3 nights. Tuesday's my recap. Wednesday's my whatever. Thursday's my preview. Pretty cut and dry. Keep it to about 45 to 50 minutes. And I think it works out pretty well. So with that, let's go ahead and, now that you guys have gotten an education on just how the Fan Show came to be the Fan Show from the Butt Fumble Show or podcast, which was a genius rebranding idea, and how we went from a weekly podcast to 3 nights a week. So there you have it. There's the story. So let's get to headlines. And boy, are there a lot of headlines. Oh my goodness. First and foremost, a big congratulations goes out there to Cynthia Freeland, because I am now 0-2 on the season. Not how I wanted to start out at all for Fan versus Fan Show Pick'em. Kevin Goatee got me in week 2. I didn't have a week 1. I kind of completely forgot about it. I was like, it feels like there's something I was supposed to do. Oh, well, not important. And then the next week I was like, oh, I was supposed to do that. So anyway, Kevin Goatee crushed me. I think I got 1 right, and he got like 3 or 4 right. That was bad. Cynthia, though, she went 4-1. I went 3-2. I got the Washington Redskins over the Packers right, but she picked the Saints over the Falcons, and that was the one. Well, I guess you could say the Rams and the Chargers, but I was willing to lose out on that one. I really thought the Falcons were going to beat the Saints at home. Which brings us to the next headline. So I'm 0-2. Congratulations, Cynthia. She's one of the best in the biz to do it, and she proved that against me, obviously. I mean, there's no better competition out there for straight-up pick'em than your man, the real Richard T. here at the Fan Show. Then there were 3. The Chiefs, the Dolphins, and the Rams. We are in week 3, and there are only 3 undefeated teams left. Who knows? There could have been more, but there's 4 teams out there with a freaking tie in their record. I don't know how things would be different if those teams actually had the win instead of the tie. But either way, all 4 of those teams with the ties have a loss as well. So I guess it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So 3 undefeated teams left. Chiefs look like the real deal with young quarterback Patrick Mahomes, and I can say this because they were throwing it and running it up and down the field on my Niners all game long. Niners mounted a hell of a comeback. I think they scored 14 to 3 in the second half. But man, they ran away with it early in that game, and it was a big deficit to overcome, which leads us to the saddest news of the day, of the week, of the season, and that is that young Jimmy G is done for 2018. That's right. 49ers mounting a comeback. Everything looks great. Jimmy G, instead of going out of bounds, decides to try to get a couple extra yards. Non-contact injury, although, oh, what a hit, though. I'm surprised that didn't do it. Tears his ACL. He is out for the season. C.J. Beathard, which we all saw for an extended period of time last year. In fact, he was one of the 6 wins, because Jimmy got 5, but everybody thinks that he was solely responsible for their 6-10 record. No. CJ Beathard led the 49ers to a win over the New York Football Giants. So he will take the reins again. I like Beathard, I really do. But I think there are a few other quarterbacks out there that are worthy of a start that should maybe get some consideration, and we'll talk about that in a second. Speaking of getting the start, Josh Rosen will get the start for the Cardinals. Cardinals lost again, and no surprise there. They're the Cardinals, and is it rebuilding at this point? I don't know. Fitzmagic, has it run out? That's the big question mark. Last night, Monday Night Football, threw 3 interceptions in the first half, then 3 touchdowns in the second. And they lost by 3, but man, they really had you wondering if they were going to overcome a 17-point deficit. Would have been the most in Buccaneers history, but they were unable to do so. They got the ball back with about 3.5 minutes left, and everything seemed great. 3 and out. They punted the ball. I personally think that was 4-down territory. Big Ben would connect with Juju Smith-Schuster, and it would dash the hopes of not only the Buccaneers, but myself, because I was playing a guy. I had Fitzpatrick, he had Juju Smith-Schuster, and before that completion, I was within a point of him. Like, it mounted the mother of all comebacks. Fitzpatrick just needed to complete a pass, and I probably would have won, but the completion of Big Ben to Juju was the final nail in my coffin. So I am 1-2 in both leagues because I beat Aaron Coscarelli. That's right. Oh, thank you, Drew Brees. It's a thing of beauty. She's 0-3. That's crazy. I love her to death, but it's anytime you get a win over a professional. Like, I didn't get the win over Cynthia, I'll get the win over Aaron. So I'm 1-2 in both my leagues. I really need a win this week in both of them to make sure that I keep the heat turned up, the pressure on the rest of the league. Steelers, though, they get the win, but I feel like it's a Band-Aid on a broken leg because they are leading the league in category of discipline, being penalties and yards for penalties. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's a lot. And it just continues to be their Achilles heel. They got lucky last night, in my opinion. I watched this game start to finish, and if they don't, like, all of a sudden, Fitzpatrick, who's slinging it up and down the field, forced on a 3 and out. I mean, if I was a Steelers fan, I would have been sweating at that point because there was nothing about this team that says that they should have won that game, given everything that had happened. So, for the Seahawks, they spent the longest time with Bevel, and nothing changed because they continued to win and they continued to make it to the playoffs, although there was some serious needs that had to be addressed, specifically on the offense, which was his territory, and the offensive line that never got addressed because as long as you win, everything is sunshine, rainbows, unicorns, butterflies, and pots of gold, rainbows, red balloons, all that stuff. Steelers fans, I know that it felt great to win, but you guys need to lose in order for the issues to get addressed that you guys are seeing because you bought yourself a week. Plain and simple. Steelers fans have bought themselves another week. If they win, they buy themselves another week. But they will have some tough matchups, and that discipline, if it's not fixed, if it's not nipped in the butt, it's going to rear its ugly head, and it's going to cost you games. It pretty much already has, and it almost did, but it will cost you games. Ricardo Allen of Atlanta, he's gone for the season, torn ACL. It's sad to see another career, not career, but just a season end so abruptly, so early. Not that an ACL tear or season-ending injury is okay at any point in time in the season, but it's like you break a collarbone, you can probably come back unless it's like, week 15, 16. You tear your ACL even in preseason, your season's done. I hate it. I really do. I do not like that injury whatsoever. Saints and Falcons, they go to OT. They go to distance, but this one did not end in a tie. Drew Brees with like his 5th touchdown in OT seals the deal for the Saints over the Falcons. This rivalry really is something. It should be on prime time, really. Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, because it always delivers. These two teams always go bell to bell. And I love it. I really do. Panthers and Bengals, though, they battled it out. That was not a disappointing game whatsoever. Panthers would come out with the victory. Bengals, though, putting up a great fight. So both teams 2-1 now. and the Steelers are dead last in the AFC North, below the Bengals, below the Ravens, and yeah, we're going to talk about another team from the AFC North too here in a minute. Let's see. The Giants get their first win. Big surprise. The Redskins upset the Packers. Officiating seems to be ridiculous. Roughing the passer calls are everywhere. If you played a drinking game, you probably aren't listening to this because you're dead. Like, seriously, that was my challenge. Drink every time there's a roughing the passer flag or call. And then at about halftime last night, I was like, abort, you're going to die. Don't do it. Don't do it. The Bills, the letter of the week, kids, is the letter B, because the Bills routed the Vikings at home in Minnesota. It's one thing for the 49ers to lose on the road to the Chiefs after mounting a sizable comeback. I think the final deficit was 11 points. So 11-point difference on the road to a hot team like the Chiefs, that's one thing. But to lose at home 27-6 to a winless Bills team, you really got to check yourself. I'm still doing pretty good on my bold prediction that Alex Smith would have a better season than Kirk Cousins. I'm going to stick with that one because I like it. Lions shock the Patriots. They get their first win of the season. Matt Patricia gets his first win of his head coaching career over his former coach, Bill Belichick. You're hearing that right, folks. This was very unpatriot-like. Patriot fans, I believe you should be panicking now, but all you are just like, no, we do this every year. It's whatever. Seahawks avoid 0-3 by defeating the Cowboys at home. Yeah, that's the sound of a million golf claps. Whoop-de-doo. Everybody beats the Cowboys right now, unless you're the Giants. In indoor, Mark Stout is announced as the new Cedar Rapids River Kings head coach. Fan Show broke that news today, and then the Cedar Rapids official Facebook and social media pages made an announcement a few hours later. National Arena League free agency has officially started. We have the Alliance of American Football Teams. They have their names, logos, and colors. We'll go over that after our guest segment. And then referees are ridiculous right now officiating. We might talk about that with my guest, but that is the headlines, and I know all of you tuned in for one reason and one reason only, and that's because this might be the only time in the next 635 days. So this show may be the only time in the next 635 days that you will hear me say, the Browns won. That's right. Letter B is the letter of the week because the Browns, the ones from Cleveland, that's right. They won. That is your last headline of the week, the biggest one, over the New York Jets at home, thank God. But if you're the Jets, man, you are the one. You're the one that fell victim to the Browns to end the streak. Cleveland is forever hungover for the rest of the season, but we've got just the man to take enough aspirin and drink enough water that he can join us on the show to talk about his Browns and their first win in over 2 years. Producer Rob. So we'll be right back with more of the Fan Show coming up right after this. You're listening to the Fan Show, your home for all things football and nonsense. My special guest tonight, Farouk. Farouk, welcome.
He's no expert, but here's the thing. Football and nonsense is what he brings. Sports talk with a twist. It's the Fan Show.
Do you know him as Kevin from the League? It is none other than very funny Steve Ranazzisi.
99% of the population doesn't know who I am, but the 1% do. They yell and scream inappropriate things at me in public.
Kyle Ray. Kyle, welcome.
And I was like, wow, I think we just saw the whole Super Bowl, Phyllis. It was like that scene in The Simpsons, like, why rent the movie? I just saw the best part.
Funny man Brad Williams.
Yeah, I'm here. I flew in just for your podcast. I've heard about this podcast. I've heard it's fantastic.
It's Mac and Farva, but they are my special guests tonight. Steve Lemmy, Kevin Heffernan.
I was in Mexico for 10 weeks in a Speedo. Like that was me going to work. I was putting on a Speedo. Farva is the most fun to play, and it was a blast to do that again, to do Farva again.
So then the makeup artist had to put Vaseline on your body, right?
Yeah.
And then put the powdered sugar on top of that. Is your name really Richard Siemens?
Listen live every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night on Spreaker.com or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And joining me now is a man who apparently thinks that every conspiracy theory right now is about him, whether it's fantasy football drafts or dodging him to be a guest when the Browns are mentioned more than once in the show's headlines. And so here he is now because the Browns have won. I repeat, the Browns have won a game in football. Professional football, NFL football, the Browns from Cleveland have won a NFL game. So I cannot keep him off the show any longer, despite the fact that that was never how it was to begin with. So he is producer Rob. How you doing, Rob?
Don't you BS me, Ty, man. I know you're against me. You're trying to hold me down.
Holds you down. You guys got free beer from a bunch of fridges around the country. Like nobody hold you down.
I didn't get jack squat, so I don't want to hear it. All right. So before we start, I have two things I want to mention.
Okay.
First of all, I am currently driving, so if for whatever reason I stop mid-sentence and start hurling obscenities, you know why.
Okay. We've been warned.
Secondly, I would like to offer you, since you brought it up, I would actually like to offer you a bit of absolution, my friend.
Okay.
So it turns out you're not entirely at fault for my missing the fantasy draft.
I believe I said that, but okay, go on.
No, I know that, but I know I've been giving you unmitigated crap about it. So I would like to publicly on this forum come forward and say that I no longer hold you completely at fault for this.
Okay.
Allow me to explain.
Okay, explain. This will be good.
So as you remember, you asked me for my email address so you could send me the invitation. I sent you my regular personal email address, which, is the one I always use. So it turns out that I have signed into my ESPN Fantasy League account under a different email address that I haven't used in quite some time. So even though the invitation got sent to my regular personal email address, when I clicked the link to join the league, ESPN said, screw you, we're putting it in this other email address instead. So it associated everything with this league to that email address. So sure enough, when I went into that old email address for my bi-monthly purge of porn bots and Viagra ads, sure enough, I came across your couple of emails mentioning the league and the time change and all that. Huh. So they did in fact get sent. I did in fact receive them. So I forgive you, even though you're not really at fault. That being said, I still stand by my initial gripe that not absolutely confirming that your defending league champion and star of the league is not available and ready for the draft is just an egregious oversight, and I'm absolutely convinced you did it because you're frightened I'm going to beat you again this year. I'm done rambling.
Oh, okay. And fair point. Now, look, I can understand that because, yes, this is a fantasy football league in which there are friends and there are people. I haven't even seen the movie yet, but I feel like we're the kind of group that would take the game of tag too seriously. And that's how it is with fantasy football, that we would cut corners without breaking rules just to ensure us a little bit of an extra edge going into the week. So, yes, it makes total sense to me for you to feel that you were slighted in the fact that you were made unaware of when the draft was. Now, of course, it could sound like I put forth the least amount of effort by just making sure that the emails were sent and that they didn't get rejected, but then also not confirming with you, I guess, Your Majesty, that you had in fact received said emails. I mean, it is what it is, and I will play along, and I love it, but sometimes I wish that this stuff like this was really the case, because it's almost too hard to write it any better. But here we are. Your team has as many wins as my team on the grand scheme of things, and I am 1-2 in fantasy. You are 2-1, I believe, right now. So things are looking good for you. I
no, actually, I'm 1-2. I'm actually 1-2. I'm on a 2-game losing streak after throttling you in week 1.
Well then, so we're all tied up on all fronts going into week 3, except for your future on the professional standpoint. The NFL spot looks much better than mine. I have to get this off my chest though, because you're someone who I feel would be an individual that would understand why this bothers me so much, and that is that people saying that had Tyrod not been the starter for the first 2 weeks, that they would have won those 2 games, and I completely disagree with that, because he was doing fine in Buffalo. Like, he was the guy that they wanted to start when they tried the Nathan Peterman experiment the first time around. And now you're going to tell me that going from Buffalo, a legitimate contender team in the East, where the Patriots are, that same division, is the guy who's responsible for your early struggles in Cleveland. Like, it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary.
Well, to be fair, and you have to understand that, it has long been a joke, and it is clearly proven by Tyrod's effort the first 2 weeks. Cleveland is where quarterbacks go to die. And there's no other logical explanation for this. But no, in all seriousness, watching the game on Thursday night, I don't know if Tyrod got his bell rung sometime earlier in the season. I don't know if he was nursing an injury. He looked so off. He looked skittish. He was moving around in the pocket way more than he normally does. He was scrambling a lot more. I don't know if he, like I said, I don't know if he got his bell rung and was just, trying to be overprotective, but he did not look like himself. And I mean, the difference from when between him and Baker, when Baker came in, it was night and day.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And a lot of people that were saying that if Baker had been in there the whole time, I'm just like, you talk about this as if Tyrod and Baker were both out there attempting field goals, and Baker went like 3 for 3 and Tyrod went like 0 for 3 and missed the game winner each time. No, not the case. And there's a lot more film on Tyrod, even if it's not with the Browns, than there is on Baker. And so it's going to be something where, they have a bit of time to prepare for a certain quarterback. And Baker may be a rookie, but we see it every season. A new quarterback starts, and they do fine because it was announced before the other team really had to prep. There's no film on them, and so they go in there with a game plan, and 50-50, it works out, it doesn't. And now everybody says, oh, this guy's the next, like, Peyton Manning, or there's the next Brett Favre, and then after a few weeks, the teams start to finally figure it out. So I'm not saying that that's going to be the case with Baker. I certainly wish him the best because I like him more than I like Darnold or Allen or Rosen. I do like Baker, I really do. But people need to just... it just seems where there wasn't a finger to be pointed, that they pointed a finger and they pointed it to Tyrod Taylor, and that's just not fair.
Well, that's two things. One, to your point, I mean, heck, the Browns have seen this happen before in, was it 2012, I think, 2012, 2013 with Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy came in off of the bench as a rookie and beat New England and New Orleans his first 2 games. And everyone's like, here's, the Browns finally had their savior at quarterback, and we all know how that turned out. And as far as the other point, it's like, unfortunately, it's the age-old adage where the quarterback always gets too much of the credit when they win and too much of the blame when they lose. And,
Yes.
Yeah, but it definitely was not Tyrod Taylor, I think, that lost us those first 2 games. Not by a long shot.
So with this newfound outlook on life, I guess, is really how you chalk it up as a Browns fan. I mean, what happens next? Because I talked about at the top of the show that Seattle had it finally happen to them last year. There were so many issues that needed to be addressed that weren't getting addressed because as long as you win, everything appears to be fine. Well, they lost, they missed the playoffs, and so then they decided to clean house, save for, of course, their GM and their head coach, but all the coordinators and some personnel, they are future endeavored and wish them all the best. The Steelers, looks like there's some issues going on internally with that locker room, but they won last night, so they probably bought themselves another week or two. But with the Browns, is this what Hugh has needed the whole time, or is there still a problem that needs to be addressed that won't be as long as they keep winning?
Honestly, at this point, I think the biggest problem that they have that needs to be addressed until he proves otherwise is Hugh Jackson. I mean, the guy came in here with a reputation as the quarterback whisperer, is a guy, that everyone loves, which still seems to be the case in terms of, it being a player's coach. I mean, the players all still love him, and you can even tell towards the end of last season, I mean, even though, they didn't win a game, you could see that the players were still playing hard for him. So that, notwithstanding, this is a bottom line business, and when you are now 232-1 in, your third year of coaching, that's got to fall somewhere. Maybe it's him, maybe it's not. It's hard to say. You go back to last year a little bit, and that was not an 0-16 team. I mean, if you go back and look at their record, at least I think 5 or 6 of their games were lost by a touchdown or less. So it's not like they were constantly getting blown out every week. I mean, they were in games, and a bounce here, bounce there in any of those games, they're a 6-10 team, and it's a different story. I don't know what the answer is. They've changed over the. I mean, at this point, Hugh doesn't have any excuses left. They've changed front offices. They've changed, a lot of players. They've changed coordinators. The only thing left now is Hugh. So if Hugh doesn't get it done this year to a reasonable degree, there's your common denominator, I suppose.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When it comes to wins and losses, a lot of people go to the coach if there doesn't seem to be a common denominator, as you said, amongst the players. People will try to point a finger, and sometimes it's just a shoot from the hip kind of reaction. But it's interesting to me that this first win in 635 days comes after they part ways with Josh Gordon. And on that same weekend, the Patriots lose as probably very, very large favorites to the Lions. I like the guy, I really do, and I think that the NFL has been rather harsh on him. But I have to ask you, is Josh Gordon a curse?
Well, let me respond like this. I don't know if you've ever read Bill Simmons, former sports guy from ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
Used to read him all the time. And he came up with this theory called the Ewing theory, which is based on Patrick Ewing, which is basically the long and short of it is, a superstar on a team that as soon as that team trades said superstar, they instantly become better. And I think that was the case. Like after the Knicks got rid of Patrick Ewing, they suddenly became, a much better team. So he kind of developed this theory. You could say that based on pure freakish athletic ability alone, Josh Gordon would qualify there. Although, not having him for, only having him for 10 games in the last 3 years, who knows? But that is a long rambling way of me saying, yes, Josh Gordon is a curse, and I'm glad to be rid of him.
Well, let me just say this, and yeah, he's a curse. I'm just
until he comes back to make the Pro Bowl anyhow, and then I'll be pissed. But
well, it was week 3 was interesting, to say the very least. Now, of course, it seems like in the first quarter of the season, there's always 1 week that sort of it. For a lot of teams, it's a fluke, but for some, it actually defines their whole season. We have 3 undefeated teams left. 2 are surprises to me. One, because it's the difference of quarterback. You never know how a second-year quarterback is going to do. So the Chiefs are 3-0. The Dolphins are 3-0, which I don't think anybody would have predicted that ever. And the only one that makes any sense is the Rams. And then, of course, we have the Buccaneers, who were trying to make it 3-0 last night. And all anybody could talk about the whole game which I don't know if he's got that audio in his ear in the helmet, was what's going to happen with Jameis Winston's suspension is over. Ryan Fitzpatrick set an NFL record for the only player to throw for over 400 yards in his first 3 games of a season. And I just want to know, like, for you watching this, because you don't have a dog in this fight whatsoever, but what is your thoughts when it comes to quarterback controversy of a young, hopefully up-and-comer, and then a seasoned vet who's been kind of a journeyman? You guys had that with McCown, and I forget who the rookie was at that time, but you've seen this. So what's your take on it?
Yeah, well, especially in this situation, I think it's interesting because to me, Ryan Fitzpatrick is the textbook definition of fool's gold. I mean, how many times have you seen Ryan Fitzpatrick, journeyman, come in, starter quarterback gets hurt, has 2 or 3 unbelievable games, generally, ironically enough, in a contract year, gets himself a nice contract, becomes a starter somewhere, craps the bed, gets released, rinse, repeat. That being said, it's hard to look past. I mean, Jameis, it's not like Jameis is, that young. I mean, he's his 4th year now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jameis, I feel like we've kind of seen where Jameis can go. And, there's always a chance you could click for him. I don't know if that's going to be the case with him. I feel like I think you've kind of seen what you're getting with Jameis already. And to me, if you're Tampa Bay, I don't know that either one of those 2 guys is the long-term answer for you. So I think you ride the hot hand until he gives you a reason not to.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. Now, obviously, Fitzpatrick is not the long-term solution. He may be the solution for the a majority of the 2018 season, but this is a guy who is probably the very definition of a 50-50 quarterback. In the first half, he threw 3 interceptions. In the second half, he threw 3 touchdowns. I mean, it's crazy how hot and cold Ryan Fitzpatrick can be at times, and to throw Winston in there right away, I mean, you'd think as far as going down the checklist, okay, so they lost, so that would mean maybe now is a good time to change. Ryan Fitzpatrick had 3 interceptions, okay, but at the same time he had 3 touchdowns. He rallied them back. Like, would Winston have been able to do that? So I think the safe play is to let Fitzpatrick start another week and then see if there's a time that calls, even if it's halftime, to put Winston in or not. But I would not stick him back out there right away because that's just asking for trouble. You're 2-1. I mean, your season is starting out as good as it can be, given you went into the start of it with a quarterback that was different than what you had planned for the last, year and a half.
Sure, I agree. I'd say Fitzpatrick isn't Miss Right. He's just Miss Right now.
That is so very true. That is great. In other news, there was an incident on Raw last night. If you want to switch gears to wrestling, I don't know if you saw it, but there's been a lot of, back and forth comment on this individual who, okay, before this happened, let me just tell you that I was about to tweet out, are we just going to overlook the fact that apparently Brie Bella has reached the wrestling definition of Super Saiyan because she's the only other free agent since John Cena to be on both rosters in this new modern era of wrestling. Which is just a surprise to me. They haven't physically come out and said it, and nobody really acknowledges it, but it is very much the case. But anyway, you saw it, I saw it. It's wow. They've been the center of a lot of criticism lately, the Bella twins. Some of it just, some unjust. You've been around the smaller promotions, WWE. What was your take after you saw it last night and saw some of the comments?
Well, yeah, here's the thing. And, people have been just destroying Brie Bella online since this happened. And, there's certainly, since she's come back, she's had more than one instance where you wonder what the hell she's doing out there. I mean, I think the first time back in the ring, she nearly killed herself twice on a tope dives out of the ring. So, this is not a surprise thing. That being said, I don't think she necessarily deserves a lot of the criticism in this instance. I mean, the fact is, this is a rough sport. Accidents happen. You go out of your way to try and take care of the person you're working with in the ring. I think what happened, it looks like the second to last kick was the one that kind of started it, and that kind of made Liv woozy, and then it was almost kind of like you could see as Brie was going to throw that last kick, she had this moment of like, oh my God, but before her body could adjust, it was too late and it whacked her right in the face.
God, that was so brutal.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely nasty looking, and I think I honestly think that the fault here is really the referee or somebody in the back should have been watching this, should have seen that, and should immediately called for the ref to throw up the sign, the X, to let them know that she was legitimately hurt and got her out of there, because especially in this day and age with, lawsuits flying around left and right, you can't be too cavalier in an instance like this. And anyone with any shred of common sense could have seen Liv Morgan when she, barely was able to kick out of that pinfall and know that something was wrong there.
Yeah, and for me, so you mentioned the Ewing effect by Bill Simmons. I want to say that there's an actual term for what I believe is happening to Brie Bella and actually both of them, the Bella twins. And I want to say it's like the Kardashian effect or something, where you talk about something so much and then you wonder why the hell you're talking about them. Like, why are they famous? I don't know. So, yes, they are under a lot of criticism. And I remember hearing stories about how wrestlers hated working with the Ultimate Warrior because he was reckless in the ring. The fans loved him, but you got nervous going in there because you didn't know if he was going to take care of you from an opponent standpoint, which I think is what a lot of people's concern is right now. We have the ability to pretty much break down frame by frame everything that goes on. But when the same name keeps popping up for stuff, whether it was completely their fault or not their fault at all, that's when there's almost an unwanted trend happening now. And now you're the center of this thing that we don't even know how it really started, because there's mistakes and botches that happen in every match. But to have it happen this frequently in such a short amount of time with the same name attached to it, I don't know if it's people decided to just pick out Brie Bella for whatever reason, and now we've got this, why are we talking about them? I don't know, but everybody else is, or if it's a legitimate concern. But I don't think last night was her fault. But there are some questionable things going on in regards to their in-ring ability, ring rust, and so forth, that I do believe needs to be addressed. So that was my take on it. I don't know why they had Liv finish the match. I thought that was dumb, but that's not a Brie thing. That's just a, whoever's in the back watching this, what the hell are you doing thing.
Yeah, no, agreed. I mean, you got road agents, you got people watching on the monitors. I mean, Vince is back there watching. You have the ref, you have a ringside doctor. I mean, somebody should have been able to see this and realize that she had no business finishing that match. And I mean, to me, that's where the real fault of this lies. I mean, it was again, it's a rough business. Accidents happen. People get hurt. I definitely think that there's going to be a lot more of a critical eye on Brie's performances now, because you can't go around injuring people accidentally or not, and all it takes is one wrong kick or one wrong move to the wrong person, and you got a whole big mess in your hands. So.
Yeah, very big mess. So we've got a lot of stuff going on in the world of wrestling that we can talk about at a later time. What is it? 1000th episode of SmackDown is coming up. I was watching some SmackDown bits from yesteryear, and one that came up was the infamous Vince McMahon Stacy Keibler personal assistant segment. And I'm watching this, And of course, it's been GIF famous, right? It's forever one of our favorites to describe certain moments in history. And I thought of it because I saw it a lot for when the Browns won, was the Vince McMahon expressions throughout that. But I'm watching this whole segment, and I'm like, there's no way that this thing would have lasted even a minute into without the internet pretty much exploding on itself. I mean, do you ever miss those segments and just the balls that Vince had to go out there and do things that were like that blatant, like that sexist, and that just, in your face?
No. I mean, I don't know. I mean, call me a crotchety old bastard, and he'd be totally justified in doing so. But I feel like stuff like that, it appeals to the lowest common denominator, and it's easy stuff to get by. And I think that a lot of people want to say that Vince is a genius, and I mean, don't get me wrong, Vince McMahon has done tremendous things for the business of professional wrestling. But I started to think about it the other day, and I will get into this much more in depth once I've actually had a chance to really flesh it out a little bit more. But I don't think Vince is nearly as much of a genius as people give him credit for. And I think he's just gotten very lucky over the course of his career. And one of those things is just capitalizing on, the Attitude Era thing. No, I don't really miss it. I think, there's a lot smarter things you can do in wrestling that I don't think have been done yet. And, I mean, look at some of the stuff that they're doing in New Japan, for instance. There's just a lot of great stuff that could be done, and they could take advantage of that. I don't think WWE would never do, because Vince has his style and his preferred type of wrestler and his idea, of everything else. And until, sadly, such time as he is not in position to do that anymore, I don't think that's going to change.
Yeah, that's a very valid point and something I completely agree and concur with. So we will talk more wrestling as certain events get closer, because there's a lot going on, so much so that I don't know how Michael Cole keeps track of everything that he's trying to hype up in a 2 or 3 hour broadcast. But
neither does he.
I know exactly. But because your Browns won on a Thursday, that means that this could be their longest stretch of time without a loss in the last 2 years, as they will play Sunday in the afternoon against the Raiders, who are winless. I mean, who would have thought that's where these records would be at this point in the season? But if Gruden loses to the Browns, or if he's losing to the Browns, he might Vontae Davis this thing and retire at halftime with his $100 million.
Hey, it's a funny thing. It turns out, Richard, when you trade your best defensive player, your defense suddenly sucks. Who knew?
Who knew? Oh, so how are you going to celebrate the rest of the week? Because you can't lose until Sunday, and even then, I feel like I was looking through my pick'em, and I'm just like, my God, am I going to pick the Browns right now? Because I picked them a couple of times last season, and they let me down each time. But I might legitimately pick them this week. If they're underdogs, it's got to be by 7 or less. There's no way that they could be 14-point underdogs to a winless Raiders team. I don't care if they're at home or not.
No way. No. At the end of the day, I as much as I enjoyed Thursday night's game, I do think that we need to pump the brakes on, anointing Baker Mayfield as the second coming of Otto Graham. I definitely want to see, like you said, I want to see how he performs after teams get some film on him, and how he's able to adjust to their adjustments, et cetera, how they game plan for him a little bit better, and how the Browns offense plans the game plan around him and his abilities. So. But that being said, I think that right now this is a really good team. I think that they're a lot better than the Lowell Browns of old. I am very much looking forward to seeing the first winning streak in many, many years this week.
All right. Well, he is Producer Rob, but I know him as Leveland Rob because there was no W for a while there. So it was just a lot of L's, which my phone will still try to autocorrect to Cleveland with like 14 L's. It's so funny. I love my phone for that so much. But enjoy your week. Enjoy your 10 days without a loss. And then hopefully you guys can get back to back. My God, hell might freeze over at that point. But I do like Baker. There's nothing really negative that I can say about him that Colin Cowherd hasn't already said himself. So screw that guy. And best wishes to you and a very bright future for your Browns.
Thank you, my friend. And just remember, let your buddy in the Niners know that he can have Tyrod Taylor for their first-round pick next year.
I'm very happy about that. Let's get Tyrod. Let's put him back in the starting lineup where he deserves. All right. You have a good one, Rob.
You too, my friend.
All right. That was Producer Rob talking some Browns football, some wrestling too. We could, honestly, like him and I could co-host the show and talk for hours and not even like get tired of talking about what we're talking. Part of it is because there's such a big gap between when he's on from one episode to the next. Half the time I surprise him and call him and be like, "What you doing?" And then we just like go into it. But the Alliance of American Football, as promised, I have some more stuff to talk about with you here. They have announced their teams, the logos and the team names for the 8 cities. And those are the San Diego Fleet, which has my vote for best team name, best logo, best colors. I mean, this team, God, I hope they're successful because they're my favorite right now, okay? San Diego Fleet, hire me. Let's go. Let's do this thing. The Salt Lake Stallions. The Arizona Hotshots, which has firemen's axes, so I assume that's some nod to firemen in Arizona. The San Antonio Commanders. And then we have the Orlando Apollos, like the Greek god Apollo. That's a good one. I like that. The Birmingham Iron. The Memphis Express, which the Apollos and the Express get my nominations for number 2 and 3 as far as the best logo and the best name for a team. The Iron, it's kind of different. I do love the Memphis Express. The Atlanta Legends. That is your 8 teams for the the Alliance of American Football. And we've got some players that have been drafted to the AAF that are going to make some appearances here on the Fan Show. Some of them from the indoor game, good friends of mine. Very excited about that. And let's see, was there anything else that we need to cover today? Oh, yeah. EWU, that's right. Your Eastern Eagles. Go fight, win. They did win, and they won convincingly. My goodness, that final score from the Inferno from Roos Field final score was 70-17. I want to make sure I got that score right. 70-17. Antoine Custer had himself a day. Man, I was so happy to be there again. So they are now 3-1 on the season. Only loss being to WSU. They travel to Bozeman, Montana. And they are going to take on the University of Montana, hopefully get another win on the road. Very excited for these guys. I think they've got a very well-rounded team, very dominant force. And this was their first win in the Big Sky over Cal Poly. And we'll see what the Eagles have in store. So don't forget to check out Dynamite Enterprises. Hit up Ethan. He's going to customize your world. Hats, T-shirts, socks, coasters, koozies, and much, much more. And then stop in at Indy's Barbershop, 711 North Monroe Street. Get a quality haircut and a hot towel shave. Mention the Fan Show to either one of them. And Indy, he's going to cut you 15% discount on that hot towel shave and the quality haircut. Ethan, he's going to hook you up with a great deal on some quality merchandise. Trust me when I say people have loved the hats and the T-shirts, and we've got more merch coming your way. It's only the beginning. And then, of course, shout out to my guys at Undisputed Belts who continue to make just the best in belts. If you need it for your fantasy football league, your work pick'em pool, or even a sibling rivalry, hit up Undisputed Belts today and tell them I sent you, because I'm sending you to the places that you can go to get you the best quality stuff for what you need in your life. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, same time, same place tomorrow, Wednesday, BattleBot special, as we are in the first round of the tournament. We're going to talk all about it tomorrow night. So until next time, best of luck to you and yours. Go Niners, and remember, of course, it's all fun and games until you butt fumble. Good night, folks.
Do you remember the time that Mark Sanchez Thank you for having me on the show, man. I love the Fan Show.